right. Well, as Kate had a warning at the beginning of his, I'm doing the same. Look, if you're not feeling it, this will be recorded so you can watch it later. If it's been a hard day, maybe you don't want any more of this. You can shut your computer and go outside. Make yourself a nice mug of hot cocoa or whatever. If you are in the mood, wonderful. Thank you for being here. I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes, and then there's an exercise for us to do together in Miro. Miro is an online whiteboard. I'll send the link when the talk is over. This talk is called Design Under Pressure. My name is Molly. I live in Berlin. I'm from the US, and I work at Simply Secure. So Simply Secure is a design nonprofit. We're based in Berlin and New York, founded in 2014. We do design for technology that does things right, or at least it's what we try to do. So we offer design and strategy support for open technology tools, especially open source, for tools that are used for privacy, security, decentralization, transparency, human rights tools, and we offer design support for nonprofits that are working in and around technology. Why does Facebook have to get all the good design? They shouldn't. It's not the way the world should be. So we're a nonprofit that does a lot of design work with other nonprofits. I am relatively new to the nonprofit world. This is my first nonprofit job. Before that, I had been in corporate design and working in academia. So I've learned a lot, especially from working with people who specialize in security around their mindset. This talk is the result of my blending my designer's mindset with what I have learned from security experts and working in these fields over the past 2.5 years. So what I've learned and what you know from design is that something always goes wrong, but something is going wrong in ways that are increasingly dramatic and increasingly worse. This is not just like, oh, there's a bug or I can't read the text on the button. It's pretty bad. I shouldn't have to say why in 2020, but we did not foresee a lot of what's going on. This is not idle tinfoil hat speculation. It's based in experience. You still, though, see people saying, we never could have seen this coming. This is all a surprise. Bad stuff just happens. The thing is, we have enough history now with the particular kinds of bad things that have been happening that we can be a little more proactive. We can know what quite a few of the problems are going to be. We choose not to pay attention to them because thinking about risk is not usually included in a designer's job. Other people working on a tool do have ways to think about risk proactively and also ways to react when things go wrong. Legal, for example, they'll be like, oh, we'll update our terms and conditions. PR, they can be like, oh, they can issue an apology or do some kind of, I don't know, marketing campaign. Customer support can say, oh, I'm so sorry you had a bad experience. Here are some discount codes. Security can be like, oh, let's add two-factor auth, or let's make the password requirements more strict. Oh, that's a terrible idea. A whole nother rant about that. But what does design have to do with this whole world of things going wrong? We, people who work in product, are just kind of insulated from that. We are neither responsible for making sure that these things don't happen, nor do we have ways to react when bad things do happen. Partly this is the way that design has been developed and the way that design is framed. Partly though, and that's why I'm glad to be talking to an audience of designers, it's that we don't know what to do. We don't know how to think about risk. We sort of might unintentionally make a mess and assume that it is somebody else's job to clean it up. It does not have to be this way. We've developed some practical tools at Simply Secure that I hope will be really useful to you and your teams, thinking about risk and thinking about stress cases. There are 3 key concepts that I'd like to introduce to you tonight. This will get design teams into the right place to be designing for the inevitable bad stuff. Concept number 1 is stress cases. Concept 2 is threat modeling. And concept 3 is personas non grata. Stress cases. Stress cases are when extreme conditions lead to unintended situations. Sometimes no matter how much we make something usable and accessible and simple and delightful and pleasant and beautiful and all of those things that we as designers strive for, right? Stuff happens that we did not see coming. We do research with a wide variety of people. We got feedback. Well, sometimes we run into stress cases. You may have heard what I'm going to call stress cases referred to as edge cases. But that's an edge case. Usually when somebody uses the word edge case, it's in this context of that's an edge cases. And what it means is we don't need to worry about that. We don't need to think about that. The subtext is it probably won't happen. It's not that bad if it does happen, and it will not hurt our company. This is not meant to be a particular person. This is just, I just Google image searched business guy. It probably won't happen. Oh, stick around for the rest of the presentation. It's not that bad if it does happen. It's bad. Stick around, and it won't hurt our company. Again, there was a really great post by a senior product manager at GitHub, who is also an attorney. That post floated across my Twitter feed. Yes, I'm still on that terrible website. Actually, about a week ago, he writes that abuse vectors are fundamentally different from bugs or feature requests in that number of people affected or how much money they pay us does not properly capture the magnitude and nature of the risk it presents to both your customers and your business. This means that people are thinking, oh, only 1% of people want that feature. That's not that important. Well, if 1% of people have their life in danger, having your life in danger is that's very different math than 1% of people would like to be able to pay by credit card or something like this. We need to not be thinking about these things with the same math that we use for a feature request or even a bug fix. So when somebody says, don't worry, that's an edge case, what they're really saying is, well, in my ideal situation, most people are pretty similar to me and everything is fine. I mean, yeah, me too. Wouldn't that be nice? It's not like that. I'm going to show you 3 stress cases that have come up recently, so you can see examples of how in a very concrete way product design combined with forces, just very extreme forces, has caused some pretty unintended consequences. So the designers of Zoom, the platform we're using right now, presumably wanted to make video conferencing quick and easy. They did that. It was so quick and easy that on April 4th, 2020, in Charlevoix, Michigan, population 2,513, a city council meeting, which was meant to be, open to the public, was interrupted with pornography and hate speech. There are features to prevent this, but they're not on by default. They're hard to find. They need a lot of explanation. This thing that I found floating around educator Facebook, like teacher Facebook, has 10 steps for securing your Zoom. Is every city council member supposed to have to know those 10 steps? I'm not sure this is so easy and delightful and simple to use anymore. Facebook, their goal, presumably, was to help people collect and share meaningful moments in their lives. They introduced this year in review feature a few years ago. A lot of apps have since started doing this. You have to see what you did on this day 5 years ago or whatever. Well, Facebook showed Eric Meyer, a designer, a picture of his most commented on picture from the year. It turns out that is a picture of his daughter, who had that year died of a brain tumor at age 6. Facebook showed him memories of her with happy graphics. So Facebook is it's doing the best it can, but people working at Facebook were really thinking of a best case scenario here. And this was far from a best case scenario, but also not that uncommon. Airbnb, presumably the design goal here is let's make it easy for people to post tourist accommodations online. Well, they did that. In 2017, the latest statistic I could find, and I'm sure it's more now, well, maybe less during the pandemic, over 20,000 Airbnbs in Barcelona, which is a city of 1.6 million, but then attracting 20 million people a year. This over-touristing has caused rising rents, unlivable neighborhoods, resident quality of life declining, a lot of places to get a fancy coffee, but nowhere to get a light bulb. And that caused by making it easy for people to post tourist accommodations and not thinking, what might be some stress conditions here? Stress conditions are not necessarily all, quote, bad things. For example, explosive growth and really high sudden adoption or a burst of publicity are stress conditions. Some sense of urgency, a lot of people having to do something all at the same time is a stress condition. So a surge in demand, really high demand. And disaster, especially a natural disaster, any kind of tragedy or psychological stress that people are under, and a lot of unintended use cases, people using a tool or product in ways that they need, but are not the ways that the designers had in mind in their ideal world, is definitely a stress case. So this is why we call this a stress case, not an edge case, because it's going to happen. This is a big list. It probably feels a little bit overwhelming. So how do we think about which of these stress cases to plan for? We're not just going to list every bad thing we can think of, like volcano erupts. Yeah, well, if you don't live anywhere near a volcano, that's probably not a problem. Meteor strike, deadly pandemic. Oh, wait. So the concept of threat modeling is about identifying and addressing potential harms. And we can use tools familiar to us from design research, actually, to predict what might be some stress cases. I'm going to look at the chat. Can anybody guess what this man is doing? Any ideas? I'll give you a hint. In the background on the TV is a course about children's first aid over Zoom. Yeah, no, the daughter is out of the picture. That's my, yeah, viewpoint of child. Yeah, all right. So that's my husband. We have a baby. And in the child first aid course, they said, get down on your stomach on the floor and notice what looks most attractive to you. What would you like to pull on? What would you like to put in your mouth? And all of a sudden we realized, oh, we really need to change the way that our cables are arranged in the living room. So this is what threat modeling is. Study the person, that's our daughter. Study the person, study the context, and think about what might go wrong. Think about what dangers might be likely. This attitude comes straight from security. So something that's computer security, people know that not a lot of people outside security know is that there's no one such thing as like the best security for everybody. You've probably in your life heard and maybe even given a lot of conflicting advice about security. Some people are total vegans and they're like, I only use a Nokia flip phone and I don't know, whatever. Some people have password 123 as their password everywhere. This advice all conflicts because it doesn't take people's individual situations into account. There are a few things that everybody should do. I hope that you all have password managers, but other than that, it's actually quite different. The threats are quite different depending on your needs. My mom's needs and my needs are different. So this, for example, might be safe for some people. This would be a pretty safe place to keep your passwords if you are quite sure that nobody is going to come into your house. And if that's far away from your computer, this is probably not safe unless those passwords are maybe fake on purpose as a decoy so that, I don't know, this is probably not a good idea. The point being, context really matters when you're determining whether or not something is a threat. So when you're getting feedback, like usability feedback or doing design research, there's actually some questions that you can build in to think about what might threaten people, what might be some stress cases that these people in their context might encounter. This doesn't have to be a whole big extra thing that you do. You can just do this in the course of your normal interactions with users. So don't say what could hurt you. That's very invasive and kind of scary. But is there anything that might help you feel safer or more confident? You might ask, what sorts of things do you do to help yourself stay safe? What advice do you give others to stay safe? Are there any changes we could make here that would help you sleep better at night? Threat modeling is an ongoing process. It's not something that you do once and then you're done with because the world changes a lot fast. But this is an attitude that you can build in throughout the product life cycle. We've been talking about threat modeling in a way that is a relationship between the people using your design and their context, but there's another element that we really have to talk about, and that's what we're going to spend the rest of this talk and then the workshop in. And that element is other people. Personas non grata. This means a user you don't want. In most cases, we actually can't really control who is using our products and services. We make personas, we make ideal users, but like, especially if you're working on something digital, like anybody can go in there. This is the unwanted person you probably have in mind, like some kind of sinister hacker, but this is not that helpful because it's extremely vague and it doesn't express the variety of unwanted people you might have. There is a whole zoo of people you probably do not want in your product and service. And with the help of the Simply Secure community, I've actually made personas for these 10 users that you don't want. All right, we've got stalker, the terrorist, surveillance, the truther, the abuser, a swarm, a prankster, a fraudster, a naif, and an opportunist. Sometimes people look at these and they're like, okay, well, what about like racist? Well, we got racist stalkers, racist terrorists, racist surveillance. Believe me, racist is in there. We're talking about the method that they're using to attack or cause problems, not so much the motivation. So you could also have sexist, homophobic, etc. And why not hacker? Well, any of these attacks can be digital, and any of them actually could be classified as a hacker. We say hacker to mean like unwanted digital activity, and it's sort of an unhelpful term because it is so generic. So any of these could be digital. Another question I got early on was, what about trolls? What about internet trolls? Well, any of them could be like being funny or making a joke, but actually we don't really care. The line between joke and real ends up becoming irrelevant pretty fast. Sending death threats is, even if you mean it to be funny, it kind of might have the same effect as a real death threat. So we are not going to say troll or hacker. I'm going to go through these 10 personas non grata in a little more detail. And we're going to work with them in the workshop after this, actually. So let's start with the stalker. The stalker is somebody who gathers information about another person's activities and identity in order to blackmail or intimidate. I have examples for all of these. Most of the examples are real. I didn't link to stories for all of them, but like, it's not even like I particularly look for these stories. They're just everywhere. For example, proximity alerts from a running tracker app allowing a stranger to follow somebody's running path, or alerts about a purchased concert ticket. Let an ex know where you'll be. Like, you purchase this concert ticket and then it gets shared on your Facebook and somebody shows up you didn't want to see. The terrorist. This is somebody who encourages, recruits for, and or plans to carry out a violent or ideologically motivated attack. Armed citizens using a messaging service to agree on a meeting point for an attack, or a neutral platform becoming a safe space for violent, hateful ideology, or algorithms recommending increasingly violent content. Surveillance. Here we're talking about tracking and tracing people in a way that's against their interests with the weight of government and law behind them. For example, photos taken at a protest used to identify and target the people who were present, or location data from somebody's phone used to determine their loan eligibility or their health insurance rates, whether or not they know that this is happening. If they can't opt out of it, it counts as surveillance. An abuser. This is somebody who uses psychological, physical, or financial power to prevent another person from exercising basic freedoms. So somebody learns that their partner is seeing like an e-therapist, or really any therapist, and threatens them. And extremely conservative parents learn that their teen is viewing LGBTQ-related videos. Somebody asks for a divorce and in retaliation is removed from a joint bank account. The difference between this and stalker is it has to do with an existing relationship where the people are known to each other and they're weaponizing that existing relationship to make that person's life hard. So the closer people are in contact and the more they depend on each other, the more likely I would file that under abuser rather than stalker. A swarm is when a mass of individuals gather to coordinate an attack, multiply its effects, decentralize its sources, making it harder to stop. So like manipulating a review algorithm to make a book or movie or restaurant or whatever move down in the rankings or up. But I recently heard about that happening with a feminist Netflix special where a whole bunch of people made a misogynist attack to give it really bad ratings and make it move down in Netflix's ratings, which of course, if Netflix didn't know that was happening, could cause the show to be canceled because they think, oh, nobody likes this show. A swarm can completely immobilize somebody's notifications on a social media platform through high volume. Sometimes I wonder if Donald Trump has notifications turned on, like, and if so, imagine what his phone would look like. Like maybe he does just because he really, really likes the visual of things like scrolling by at warp speed. But like you can do a lot with really high volume interaction. And when people organize, it's unstoppable. So the swarm can also be combined with a lot of these others. And we'll talk about the combinations in a little bit. The naive. This is an interesting one. This is somebody who does not know the unwritten rules of how to behave in a certain context. You, the designer, thinks, oh, nobody would do that. Yeah, well, not everybody knows that. They might end up hurting themselves or others. So a baby or pet locking somebody else out of their account permanently, like, oh, 3 wrong passwords, you can never get in again. A kid buys $5,000 of in-app purchases. Oh, there have been a lot of cases of that, of accidental purchases. And you might think, oh, good, we got the $5,000. No, that's actually pretty bad. You have to deal with that. You have to fix it or the publicity will be really bad and your users are really angry. An excited new homeowner posts pictures of the keys to their house as well as the address on social media. I actually saw a friend of mine do this once. I messaged him and was like, I think you should take that down. The opportunist. This is somebody who finds loopholes and workarounds within your business model, allowing them to make or save money in a way that you don't want. And yes, even if your business model is unrelated to capitalism, people like making money, so people will try and find a way to use your thing to make money. Somebody stockpiles medical supplies and sells them for a markup on your marketplace. Somebody launches a business claiming to be able to manipulate your algorithm. Someone makes multiple accounts to trade discount codes. You respect their hustle, but that's not what you had in mind. The truther, oh boy, denies social, scientific, or legal consensus, playing on emotions and the multiplying power of virality to tell the real story. Yeah, I don't know, I need to explain this one much more. Let's just say QAnon and move on. The prankster, somebody who disrupts or causes chaos for the sake of notoriety, money, pleasure, or power. Why money? Because more clicks means more revenue for a lot of people. Causing seizures with blinking images, abusing homeless people on video, inserting unlabeled, unwanted, pornographic, or violent images, making people think something bad has happened, house robbed, computer hacked, child died, when it hasn't. So that is our population of 10 personas non grata. If you're thinking sometimes there are more than one, you're absolutely right. They often co-occur. In this story, for example, about footage from the Amazon Ring doorbell cameras being provided to US police in hundreds of cities. Amazon required police departments to, in exchange for this footage, post positive things about the product on their social media and to require citizens to use Amazon's app to report crime. So Amazon is then building this corporate surveillance network into the civic, or I suppose you could say police is already a surveillance network that exists. Police then also, individual police officers have unlimited access to footage. So I would say this is mostly surveillance, but when you think about it, also these other things are at play. Stalker, like what if somebody's ex-partner is a police officer and can then look at their house. Opportunist? Amazon is really the opportunist here. So I would say the police needs to be aware of Amazon's opportunism, and abuse, the same concern as with stalkers. You're giving a whole lot of individuals access to a whole lot of other individuals' private footage without thinking about where that might lead. How do we use this? There are these 10 characters who occur singly or in groups in pretty much every tool that we're designing. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pick one, tell the story of a stress case, and then think about a way that we might prevent it. So this is the stress case with the city council meeting. The city council meeting was held on Zoom, and it was open to the public, and some people joined and posted like racist and pornographic images, remember? Well, a way that you might prevent that would be to give meetings a security question instead of a password. So for example, what is the specialty ice cream flavor at Harry's this month? Maybe Harry's is the ice cream restaurant that everybody loves. And if you don't know what is the specialty ice cream flavor at Harry's, you don't live in the town and shouldn't be in the meeting. Just a thought. So this is, I think, the simplest way to use them. And this is what we're going to do in the workshop, is we'll go through an exercise like this. I want to address one final concern that people have brought up with me, which is that introducing this kind of negative thinking can bring our mood down, and that positivity is necessary in order to be creative. I get where this is coming from. I really do. I think good vibes are important, but actually this is where I get my good vibes, because the feeling that I am protecting people and thinking about people and kind of expressing love through my designs is really powerful and motivating to me. I like this quote: "In times of crisis, we must all decide again and again who we love." So that's where I get my positive energy, and I hope you feel the same way.